Here's a picture of the Alaskan Way Viaduct in 1951. As you saw in the 1951 photo of the Alaskan Way Viaduct, it looks pretty much the same. The bottom stills, as you saw in the 1951 photo, are still here to this day. The rest of the part of the Alaskan Way Viaduct was assembled in the mid-50s, throughout the 50s, and early 60s. There are plans for demolishing this Alaskan Way Viaduct highway to make way for a pedestrian walkway on the Seattle waterfront. Here's a picture of Pier 59 in 1906. The Pike Pier was built in 1905. It still stayed the same until 1973 when the Seattle Park Department bought it. And then in 1977 it became a Seattle Aquarium. Seattle Aquarium is still to this day an attraction to all people. Here's a picture of Colman Dock in 1912. Sadly, on April 25, 1912, a steamer crashed into Colman Dock, and the clock for the Colman Dock fell into the water and went in the depths of the water. This is the damage after the steamer crashed into Colman Dock on April 25, 1912. The clock was rediscovered lying in pieces in 1976. Then it was purchased by the Port of Seattle in 1985. It was restored and given as a gift to the Washington State Department of Transportation, and it was reinstalled on the present-day Colman Dock on May 18, 1985. Here's a picture of the Olympic National Life Building getting demolished on February 28, 1982. I'm actually going to show the footage of it when it was getting demolished.
When the sun rose over downtown Seattle, most of the demolition work on the Olympic National Life Building had already been done. The work to remove the building from its site at 2nd and Madison began last May. Workmen loaded 650 pounds of dynamite into the supporting columns of the structure. When morning came, so did the spectators, hundreds of them, standing on roofs and behind police barricades. 7 a.m. was planned as the 0 hour, but 7 o'clock came and went, while crewmen checked and rechecked the wiring for the explosion. Finally, warning blasts were sounded.
Just like a coach preparing for the Super Bowl game, you got everything laid out. Now it's time for the team to perform.
The dust cloud hovered over downtown for several minutes. When the air cleared, the demolition people found out what they already...
The Olympic National Life Building was to make way for this building, the Wells Fargo Center. It was completed in 1983, and it is a 47-story building, which is 574 feet. It is now the 9th tallest building in the city of Seattle. Here's a close-up shot of the Wells Fargo Center. Here's a picture of the Henry M. Jackson Federal Building in a full view. The Henry M. Jackson Federal Building is a 37-story building that was completed in 1974. But before the Henry M. Jackson Building was built in 1974, there was something here before, in the 1890s. The Burke Building. The Burke Building was built in 1890. It's a historical building, but the interesting fact is that it's still here to this day. As you can see, those arch. That is the arch from the Burke Building from 1890. It is about 100 years old. And there are some other remains of the Burke Building around the Henry M. Jackson Federal Building. This is a photograph of the Burke Building in 1900. As you can notice in the picture, there's the arch that you saw in the video previously right there. And the outside of the exterior of the building, you can still see it on the outside or exterior of the Henry M. Jackson Federal Building. Here's a picture of Smith Tower 1913 in under construction. The Smith Tower was a 38-story building that was completed in 1914. Here's a skyline picture of Seattle in circa 1920s with the Smith Tower. An interesting fact about the Smith Tower, there is a fallout shelter in the entrance hall. Even though the Smith Tower looks like it was cleaned very well, it was only washed once in 1976. Another interesting fact about the Smith Tower, that was actually the first skyscraper in Seattle. Even though the Smith Tower was the first skyscraper in Seattle, it was actually the tallest building from 1914 through 1962 in Washington and in Seattle. Here's a picture of Hotel Seattle in 1900. The Hotel Seattle was built in 1890, then it was taken apart in the early 60s to make way for the sinking ship garage. Here's a picture of the sinking ship garage in the early 1970s. The sinking ship garage hasn't changed a lot from the 70s. Only a couple signs have been changed and some lights around it, and nothing else really changed. But it really changed a lot from 100 years ago. The red buildings you can see on the left are actually built from the 1890s, so that's still the same from 100 years ago. Here's a picture of Pike Place Market in the 1920s, facing north. Here's a picture of the Pike Place Market in the 1950s. Overall, Pike Place Market hasn't really changed since the 1950s. It still looks the same to this day. Overall, not a lot of things has been changed that much. Some of the buildings you see, like this one, it's still the same, and that Meet the Producer sign is dated back from the 60s, so pretty old. Everything's pretty much the same to this day. Here is a picture of the Seattle Monorail on September 6, 1962. This still looks the same from 1962, except for some numbers painted on the monorail tracks, and some glass buildings have been added later on. Also notice the the Space Needle in the background 1962 photo, which still looks the same to this day. Before I end this video, I'd like to show some more pictures of Seattle buildings, how it looks like before and how it looks like now.